Yeah, why don't you borrow mine? 'Cause
Good morning. I would like to welcome you to this meeting of the Port Angeles Business Association, where we have another one in our series of electoral forums. I'd like to ask you to please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today we have several ballot measures that we will be discussing here. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator, Jim McIntyre, who will take it from there. Please go ahead, Jim.
Good morning, everyone. As you may remember, I have plenty of experience being on the camera where Sue Erzin and Ron Cameron are seated currently, but this is the first time I've done a moderating function, so we're going to learn together. I'd like to thank everybody who's participating this morning. We have 3 ballot measures that'll be on your November 3rd ballot, which you'll get in probably about another week and a half. We'll take them in due course, but first I'd like to introduce Sue Erzin and Ron Cameron. They're both elected members of the Charter Review Commission. Sue's a member of the League of Women Voters, and Ron, of course, as you know, is the Undersheriff of Clallam County. We thank them for their service. Later on, I'll introduce Patty Morris and Rod Fleck, again, both elected members of the Charter Review Commission, and they will come for the last of the initiatives or the ballot measures that we'll discuss. So we'll take a few minutes to address the pro side and the con side of the argument. Sue will take the pro and Ron will take the con side of the argument. And we'll, when they stop talking, we'll have a brief time for questions. This is going to be a tight morning because there's a lot to be said about each one of them. So I will stop talking and we'll let the pro go first. So Sue, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today about amendment number 3, the frequency amendment. We are a home rule charter county. There are 6 other home rule charter counties in Washington. The other 6 counties include King, Pierce, Snohomish, Whatcom, San Juan County, and Clark County. Almost all of those counties, except one, have larger populations than Clallam. And yet all of them have a charter review commission that meets every 10 years. I support the change back to 8 years as a compromise between 5 years and 10 years. I made this chart, which I hope you can see, that the frequency amendment has been on the ballot 7 times. Notice that the voters have supported 8 years, 7 years, and 5 years. The Charter Review Commission has met 7 times in the last 44 years. I believe that meeting so frequently, we generate confusion about what the Charter Commission actually accomplishes. Samples of what we have been requested the charter to include are the number of bathrooms that should be in homeless campgrounds, a request to change state and national laws, and a request to add a heavy equipment emergency response plan to the charter. The purpose of the charter review is to create or modify the overarching frameworks of our local government. Charter review commissions do not write laws, ordinances, codes, or policies. Our charter is like the US Constitution or the state constitution. They create a framework for our government, but the elected Congress and state legislatures pass the laws. The Charter Review Commission is not the legislative arm of our county. By meeting less frequently, we can also save taxpayer money. Every Charter Review Commission carries a budget from the Board of County Commissioners. It uses staff time and also fiscal resources takes them away from our county duties. This year's budget is $10,000. 8 years gives stability to our county government. Meeting more frequently can create difficulty in efficient long-range planning for the county. A 5-year interval is only slightly longer than the single term of an elected official. By meeting every 8 years, the county cycles through 2 terms for many of the elected officials. It gives us time to see what works. Also, by changing the election to every 8 years, the next charter review election would be in 2027 and would no longer coincide with the presidential election, so that voters can concentrate exclusively on county government. It might make sense to meet more frequently if the Charter Review Commission was the only way to amend our charter. But the Charter Review Commission is only one of 3 ways to amend our home rule charter. Citizens can use an initiative, and the Board of County Commissioners can propose changes. And of course, remember that all amendments, whether proposed by the Charter Review Commission, the county commissioners, or the public, have to be voted on by county voters. This amendment changes the frequency to every 8 years. This means we would have 4 charter review commissions in the next 32 years. In 32 years, this amendment, number 3, makes the difference of the Charter Review Commission meeting 4 times instead of 6 times. Charter Review Commissions are still going to meet, they're just not going to meet as frequently. So I urge you to vote for this amendment for 5 reasons. It's not necessary to meet every 5 years. There will be 2 Charter Review Commissions less if we meet every 8 years. Every 8 years is still less than every other home rule charter county in the state. Meeting frequently can confuse some voters on what the charter is and what it can and cannot do. It saves money. The charter is for the county what the Constitution is for the United States. 8 years gives more perspective and stability to county government. I hope you will vote yes for amendment number 3, to have the Charter Review Commission meet every 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I should have mentioned at the beginning that the first one up for discussion is the increase in the time duration between Charter Commission elections and the review of the charter. That would be from 5 years to 8 years. And I also failed to mention, if you have a question, please use the chat function in Zoom, and I'll be looking at the questions as they appear there. And so, Ron, over to you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to everybody here today. I appreciate you allowing me to be here. Sue did a wonderful job explaining the introduction as far as what the Home Rule Charter is and everything. It allows me to take a couple seconds just to thank people like Sue and Norma and Patty. It's been an absolute privilege to serve with them on the commission this year. You've been great leaders and wonderful mentorship. I'm the freshman of the group, so I haven't served before. So I wanted to take a couple minutes to do that. So, but on to my position as far as the frequency of the charter. And like Sue said, this is a very important document. It's our Constitution. You know, in the federal level, you have the Supreme Court that reviews the Constitution almost on a daily basis, so you can't pick up the paper without seeing it. Now we are asked every 5 years to review the charter. We don't necessarily have to change anything, but once every 5 years, we come together through the electoral process to review the charter. So there's several reasons why I think this is an unnecessary amendment and perhaps maybe even a little detrimental to our process. And you know what, folks, this year is a very good example of that. Everybody was all fat, dumb, and happy at the beginning of the year when January rolled around and we started to get together and start to chart our course through 2020 and what we were going to do with the charter review this year. And then what happened? COVID hit. And it's been an absolute challenge, and I'm sure Sue agree with me on that, to keep our 15 commissioners, working together on the Zoomies. We've lost approximately, I think we lost about 6 weeks of meetings because of the process this year. And this really affected our discussions and our debates, movements toward other amendments, not just this one. And also, and maybe mostly important, we didn't have public hearings. We weren't able to get out there and talk to our folks, and they weren't able to come see us. Sure, they could send emails or other sources of communication, but the mechanism just wasn't the same. And, we just kind of lost some ground there. It just didn't make it more meaningful. So we've kind of lost that. And now we want to wait 8 years to kind of come back and review everything again. Folks, we live in very dynamic times. Even without the current events that we're seeing day to day, our political climate changes regularly all the time. And while a lot of these changes don't have anything to do maybe with Clallam County or our charter, a lot of them do ask us to review and take a look at how we do business here in Clallam County. I think 5 years is sufficient time for a new amendment to be put into place, experienced, realized, and validate or not, so that changes and adjustments can be made. If the new amendment is not effective or some unforeseen ramification develops from its adoption, living with it for the duration of 5 years is much more palatable than 8. So in short, I just don't see where the need to change even exists at this point. We have precious little time in the 1 year in 5 that we have now. And as far as the cost to the CRC, yes, we had a budget for $10,000 this year, but I don't think we touched it. I don't think we spent very much of it at all. And I think that's de minimis in the county budget as far as that's concerned, because again, Sue's right. This is how we do business. And I think it's very important to all of us, particularly our community and our citizens of Clallam County, that we be energetic in reviewing our processes constantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. I guess my feeling is that as I said earlier, that the charter has already met 7 times in the last 44 years. And with this amendment, we will be meeting 4 more times. And I think that the 5-year calendar, what happens is the first year you elect, like we did last year, you elect commissioners. The second year, we actually work on, as we're doing now, the commission. The third year, we can implement the changes. The 4th year, we elect the commissioners again, and the 5th year, we have the amendments and vote. So there isn't, it cycles through a constant feeling amongst, I think, the public that this is some kind of a legislative body, and it is not a legislative body. It is a review of our charter. But I agree with Ron about the money. I think this year with the virtual meetings, we are going to have a lot less reimbursements for people traveling back and forth. And our survey this year didn't cost us anything because we sent it out all through emails. So, but I do think that we should treasure our charter as our Constitution, and it is not a document that needs to be reviewed every 5 years.
Ron, 2 minutes if you need it.
Oh, I just want to, reiterate, obviously Sue and I are real far apart just on the dates on this, and because we both agree how important the charter is, and that's the foundation of it. It's very important. And again, It's a charter review. It isn't a charter change. We don't have to come together to change the charter. We could have come together last January and decided really quickly that, you know, this is a pretty good document the way it sits. It's not likely that's going to happen with 15 people and a lot of different opinions, but it's a review. It isn't a charter change. So I believe that 5 years is frequent enough for such an important foundation of how we do business in Clallam County. And I think that propels us forward throughout these dynamic times here in the 21st century. So thanks again to Sue and everybody here this morning. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you both. I see a question from Steve Behrman, and it reads, for this and the previous cycles, what were the most important and most significant findings and the actions taken? And to make that germane to the frequency of the review and the election of the Charter Review Commission, were there any particular things that, and you may have covered this already, but were there any particular things that you found that were unique to the 5-year cycle versus the 8-year cycle? And some of that has been covered.
Well, I would say the biggest change that has occurred to our charter is to make our Department of Community Development, the director, an elected position instead of an appointed position. And that has had huge repercussions in the land use decision-making in our county over the last years since that occurred. So that was a huge turnover in the department. I know that's going to be discussed later, but since you asked, we have made some. I would say is the biggest change that has occurred in the charter. As to the second part of your question, I would just say that the biggest difference is you need to realize that we're not eliminating meetings of the charter review. We're just reducing the frequency so that in the next 32 years, we will have 4 charter review commissions instead of 6.
Thank you, Sue. Ron?
Yeah, if I can just take a couple of seconds to respond to that. And it doesn't answer directly, but I do want to point out to the question that we do more than just the amendments that you've seen. The amendments that you are seeing, that we're discussing, debating, whatever, that you'll see on the ballot, are what has trickled down on all the other discussions. And so some of the important things that we discussed during this term, we talked a lot about homelessness. We talked a lot about franchises, which is an element within our charter. There are a lot of different things that didn't make it to the ballot. We sent some recommendations to the commissioners instead of doing amendments. But there is so much other work behind the scenes. It's like an iceberg. You just see the top of the iceberg, and that's the amendments that are put forward to the ballot. There's a year of discussion amongst 15 commissioners that we put forward and discussed throughout the year. I didn't mean to take too much time on that, Jim. But...
No worries. And oddly enough, I don't have any questions. So we're going to move to the second ballot measure that will appear on the general election ballot. And that is to reduce the number of signatures that are required for voters if they choose to run an initiative to repeal the charter. Right now, the charter specifies that 35% of the number of voters who voted in the gubernatorial election in the last statewide election, that would be this year, of course, that's the number of signatures that are required to put an initiative on the ballot to eliminate the charter altogether, the home rule charter. And this would reduce that number to 20% of the number of voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election. So, Sue, the pro side, go.
Ron and I were talking before we started, and we're saying that we are the number amendments. the number for the frequency and the number for signatures. Thank you again for having me speak now on amendment number 6, and I'm calling it the signature amendment. Just to clarify, I am not supporting this amendment because I want to repeal our charter. I have lived in Clallam County for 20 years. I was a charter review commissioner in 2007, and I am the chair of the charter commission now. But it was just this past fall that friends of mine pointed out to me what they considered is a very unfair hurdle that exists in our home rule charter. They pointed out that the charter requires initiative to repeal the charter to have signatures equal to 35% of the voters in the last gubernatorial election, which is Jim explained. The comment prompted me to do some research. I found out how unusual that 35% is. I discovered that every other home rule charter county requires 20%, except Clark County and King County, which do not allow an initiative process. I also found out that there are no other initiatives in our own charter that requires more than 20%. Our charter requires 3% to place an ordinance on the ballot, 10% to place a referendum on the ballot to repeal an enacted ordinance, and it requires 20% to put an amendment for the charter on the ballot. In Washington, in our state, only 8% is required to place an initiative on the ballot. Following up on my research, I propose this amendment because the current number stands out as an incredible obstacle to citizens. What do these numbers mean? If you want to place an initiative on the ballot now, you have to collect 13,811 signatures of the 39,462 people who voted in the in 2016. The amendment simply reduces that number of the signatures required. You would have to collect 7,892 signatures. Whether you support the charter or would like to see it repealed, this is an issue of fairness to the voters. If you have ever collected signatures for an initiative, you know that it takes a lot of time and effort to collect signatures. It'd be extremely difficult to collect 13,811 signatures without using paid signature gatherers. Also, I don't know if you know that the Charter Review Commission is prohibited from proposing the repeal of the charter. The only way that the charter can be repealed is by a citizen initiative. This amendment makes it easier for citizens to exercise their right to propose a repeal of the charter on the ballot. This puts the requirement for signatures in line with the rest of the initiatives in the charter and in the state. This amendment is only about getting an initiative to repeal the charter on the ballot. Of course, the voters then will have a chance to vote whether to approve or reject that idea. So I'm urging you to vote yes on Amendment 6 so that if ever citizens wish to repeal the charter, they can collect 7,892 signatures instead of 13,811 and have it placed on the ballot so that voters can vote on it. Thank you.
Ron.
Well, once again, thanks for letting me be here. I got to admit here, I wasn't quite as prepared on this one as I was because Commissioner Stokin was supposed to be the con side of this. I'd like to point out that we've had some exchange so that she could get her thoughts in too. And she sends her apologies for not being here, and she had a conflict. But so in a way, I see this amendment connected with the other numbered amendment that we were talking about. In that I see it that if there is a need to repair, redo, or repeal the charter, then why are we should meet every 5 years to take a look at it and see what's going on, to keep it, conducive with the times and be be up to date. I find it odd we're asking voters about in one amendment to lengthen the time between charter reviews, and then now we have another one requesting shortening the number of votes needed to repeal it. So I thought this was kind of odd to begin with. And again, both Sue and I have really tried to hammer home how important the charter and what this document means to all of us. It's one that we take great pride in. It's the foundation of our local government and allows us, our own community, to have a say in the way our government is operated. And I think that's important because Clallam County is so unique in the state of Washington and anywhere in the world. Now, I agree the number is high, but it should be. If we were able to take a step such as to repeal a charter, I want to make certain that it's the best interest of all the community. It's a high threshold, but at the end of the day, it's asking for a third of another fraction of our voting public. The amendment would actually put that to a fifth of the suggested numbers that Sue has pointed out. And once again, and for both of these, I know I keep going back to number 3 and number 6. We did have the opportunity, albeit it wasn't as much as we would have liked. We heard from no one in the public that I'm aware, and I could be corrected, but I'm not aware of anybody from the public that sent to us any concerns about, the number it takes to repeal the charter, or there was no public input on this whatsoever that I recall. I could have missed that, but I don't believe that the public had any input on that whatsoever. So I'm really not sure the effectiveness of all this. And again, I think it conflicts with number 3 in a lot of different manners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Sue, an additional 2 minutes if you need.
It's been a difficult time in our county and nation during the pandemic. It's been a huge learning curve for the Charter Review to meet virtually. Citizens can't attend our meetings by phone or video. We haven't had any public hearings. Most of our input is through emails. So in April, the commission created a survey, and I hope many of you filled that survey out. You may remember that survey asked citizens whether they supported 10 different topics. The response was actually higher than we had hoped. Over 750 surveys were returned. For me, it was a way to let citizens know what the commission was considering. There was no background information about any of the topics. It was not a voter's guide. Your presence here and your willingness to listen to us explain the amendments shows that you are open to learning about the reasons behind these amendments. The Charter Review Commission supported putting this amendment on the ballot, and I am asking you to support it for 4 reasons. No other initiative in our charter requires more than 20%. Signatures of 20% of the number of voters who voted for governor in the last statewide election is the highest number in every charter, in every charter and in the state. 35% is non-existent as a requirement anywhere. This chart change is only fairness to the voters. And the fact that there's been no public input on this, I think that's a sign that people really think that our government is doing well, and that the government is functioning well, and that we don't need to make changes into it every 5 years. So this initiative does not repeal the charter. It puts the issue on the ballot so that citizens can reject or approve it. And it doesn't mean that people have to put this on the ballot. It just gives, if 700 citizens want to do that, I think that should be allowed to be on the ballot. Please vote for amendments 3 and 6.
Ron?
Okay, and once again, thank you, Sue. I appreciate all the background that you've given because that shortens the time I have to talk. So I think it works out for me. But the reality is, there's a couple statements that Sue mentioned. And again, she's been a fine leader and a great commissioner for us all. But she made a statement that, She wants to make it easier for the voters. This shouldn't be easy, folks. This is a very serious document. The charter is absolutely important to the foundation of our government. And so having people involved, making sure that they know what it means to repeal a charter is very important. So, you know, again, I wasn't quite as prepared for this one as I was for number 3, but I am on the asking you to vote no for both 3 and 6 amendments to the charter review, or the charter. And I think that's about all I have for this. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, Jim, and all of PABA. I appreciate the ability to get this out there. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, good. The caffeine has kicked in, and I have a question.
Sure.
There are 39 counties in our state, of course. 7 of them have home rule charters, the other 32, and this includes a very heavily populated county, Spokane County, function under the general laws that have established county governments from the beginning of time here, essentially. So it's been quite a number of years since the charter was first established. I think it was in the 1970s, early 70s. Are the reasons that stimulated the discussion and ultimately the successful vote to install a home rule charter here in our county still effective? In other words, do we still have the same reasons to have a charter as existed back in the 70s today? Or is there really not much of a reason to have a charter? So that's part A. Part B is, do you think it would be wise for the Charter Review Commission to have the power to recommend to the voters that they rescind the charter? So 2 parts to that question.
I think that one of the great advantages of having a home rule charter county is it allows for initiatives and referendums. And I think that, and the other issues, it allows you to change officials from elected to appointed. And it also allows you to change the number of commissioners. Otherwise, according to the other counties, it's a function of the growth in population. It also, you can choose between having a council form of government or the Board of County Commissioners. So I think that having a home rule charter continues to allow you to have that kind of flexibility.
Oh, I couldn't agree with Sue more. I think that the home rule charter, as we discussed a little bit when I was talking about amendment number 3, it really addresses Clallam County's interest in current events and responding to that, whether it's homelessness or we didn't make an amendment. Again, we have a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't quite see every day, day to day. But we recently, I think the commissioners, did they see it this week or next week about the forester? And, you know, forestry is still an important aspect of Clallam County. It's, you know, one of our staples here and foundations of what we do. And so having that opportunity to be able to address the issues that are current is very important, so that, you know, if needed, we can include it in the charter. But I agree wholeheartedly with Sue. I think that there's no question. And we absolutely should keep it. It's our voice. Otherwise, we just wind up following the state rules. I just don't think, I really don't believe just because other counties are doing certain things that we should do the same thing, even though they're home rule charters. This is Clallam County. This is what it's about. And this is what's important to us here. Thanks.
And
Jim, in response to the other part of your question about whether
People should
what was the second part about the?
yeah, I was just going to re-ask the second part, which is, should the Charter Review Commission itself, as an elected body, have the power to recommend to the voters that the charter be rescinded or eliminated?
I would say no, but I have to say I was fascinated looking at the charters for Clark County and King County because I couldn't find how they could repeal the charter. And they said that according, in Clark County, they said that according to state laws and interpretations by the judiciary, that you can't repeal the charter. And I just read that and I thought that was really an interesting thing. I don't think there's any county that has repealed a charter. I do think that there are several counties that wanted to go to a home rule charter and they couldn't get it passed. So it's a very individual according to the counties.
Ron?
Actually, I can't add to that. She's absolutely right. I know there's a couple of counties out there that have tried a couple times. I think Clark tried several times before they were able to get theirs through, and Whatcom was another. You know, we laid the groundwork. We were one of the first counties. I don't know if we were the first, but we were one of the first counties to go to home rule charter, and you know, it's worked for us ever since.
Yeah, I think King County predated us, but we were if King County was first, we were definitely the second. There's a question from our listeners. Has the charter ever been changed by actions submitted by citizens and or the Board of County Commissioners?
There were actually the first amendment about the frequency was submitted in 1981 by the county commissioners right after the charter was voted in 1976. And the commissioners proposed that amendment and it failed to have it meet every 7 years. They proposed 2 amendments and 2 have passed. No, they proposed 5 amendments and 2 have passed, and the Citizens Initiative had proposed 2 and 2 have passed.
And any by the Board of County Commissioners? I don't
Yes, the
remember
Board of
any.
County Commissioners have proposed 5 and
Okay.
2 passed, and this one was proposed by the county commissioners.
Thank you. Ron?
You know, I don't have any historical data. Like I said, I'm the freshman of the group, and I'm really happy that Sue's here to be able to answer questions like that.
Thank you, Sue, for knowing the history. Well, thank you both, Ron and Sue, for ably representing both sides of the issues on these 2 measures that voters will have a say on here in a matter of a few short weeks. I would ask Patty Morris and Rod Fleck to come forward, and I'm going to describe so that we can be efficient with time, I'm going to describe the last charter amendment that'll be on the ballot. And again, I think it's been on the ballot several times. It relates to the elected director of the Department of Community Development. This amendment to the charter would remove the DCD department, DCD is the shorthand version, from being an elected official and would return the position to one that's appointed by the Board of Commissioners. It would become effective at the end of the term of the current director of the Department of Community Development, and that's going to be a couple of years from now, I believe, but I'm not sure. So Patty Morris is a realtor. She's an elected member of the Charter Review Commission that I had mentioned. She's a business consultant. She's also a candidate for Clallam PUD Commissioner. Rod Fleck is a longtime Charter Review Commissioner. He's been on several iterations of the Charter Review. He's the city attorney and planner for the city of Forks, and we thank Rod for getting up way early and driving that beautiful drive around the lake to be here this morning. So Patty will take the pro side of the argument and Rod would take the con side of the argument. Patty, 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to PAB members today. I'm also a longtime PABA member. I propose the amendment for the charter regarding return of the DCD director to an appointed position. The amendment, if voters approve it, will become effective at the end of the elected DCD director's term. In no way am I saying that the current DCD director is not doing a good job. I believe she's doing a good job, but is hindered by the lack of local, state, and national laws and regulations for an elected DCD director. She is the only elected DCD director in the nation. During our interviews of county elected and appointed officials, including the DCD director, their recommendation was to return it to an appointed position. Every jurisdiction in the nation appoints this position. Because all DCD directors are appointed, there are no Washington state laws governing an elected director, thus causing policy and governance issues. I first got involved and wanted to run on this charter because I had worked on some issues related to code enforcement and land use issues. And what I found was that the elected director did not have the ability or authority to make decisions because the County Board of Commissioners have the legislative and executive authority. And the charter says that the director prepares and presents information to them for consideration and approval, like an appointed staff member would. So the ultimate authority is the Board of County Commissioners, and I don't see that that is going to change. The charter, which has a section that said after it was an appointed position, which I did serve on that Charter Review Commission to turn it from elected or appointed to elected during that time. And it had specifically to do with the fact that there were issues with the current DCD director, and the building community was having issues with that director. And the current Board of County Commissioners did not want to be the supervisors for that position. So at that time, it made sense to turn it into try to send it to the voters to see if they would elect the position to solve the issues that were current. And there is a section in the charter that says that once it was elected, that the ordinances would be reviewed and amended by December 31st, 2004. That statement is currently in the charter, and to my knowledge, there have not been any changes adopted, which then puts this position in limbo for an elected DCD director. And thus, there have been no state laws to change, which then further support that position to be elected. I also see that there are issues in section 5.25 of the charter, which states that a hearing examiner system would be established for consideration of land and shoreline development issues. It talks about qualifications for the position and procedures to employ that position, and they are established by the Board of County Commissioners. The DCD director is not involved in that process according to the charter. So again, it's back to the Board of County Commissioners having the legislative and executive authority to deal with those issues. And it's my understanding that the hearings examiner works for the elected DCD director, and it, in my opinion, is handled as if they were an appointed DC director already. Nothing has been changed. I believe that statewide DCD directors are appointed because of the issue with governmental leaders. Other governmental jurisdictions are also looking for consistent land use rules and decisions. I am in support of turning this back to an appointed position, and I hope the voters will consider that. Thank you.
Well, good morning, PABA and folks watching online. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having these debates. We're a charter county. That is an opportunity for us to utilize great flexibility, creativity, and adaptability to respond to our uniqueness here in Clallam County. In 2002, as Patty noted, both of us were on that Charter Review Commission. And when the votes came around, I was the one that had first passed, and then I said, okay, send it to the voters. with a little bit of hesitation because the issue is what would we have? With the issues that were going on at that time, we had a huge argument of political influence in the director of community development, and that was going on in a way that the public was not really purview to and understanding of. And when we confronted folks on that, the idea came, well, maybe we could make this a voted position. And that way the elected official would be responsible as a nonpartisan elected official to the voters. When issues associated with land use, environmental planning, things like that were at stake that would affect the person's building permit processes, their dreams, their property, etc. And it's a position that since 2002 has been responsible to you, the voters, where the elected official has to justify to you every 4 years why you should let them stay in office or whether or not they should be replaced. An appointed position doesn't have that. Every charter review commission since 2002 has argued, I would say, that we shouldn't be unique. We're a charter county, but we shouldn't be unique. That's inherently problematic to me. If you're arguing for having a charter for a charter county, you want to use that uniqueness that you're given and that opportunity you're given. There's also, Patty didn't make this argument, and so I'm not going to say within Patty, but some of the people proposing this have argued the voters just don't understand. The voters didn't get it right. In 2007 and 2015, you voted against making this an appointed position overwhelmingly. In 2015, 64% of the voters voted no to make this an appointed position answerable to the commissioners and or the county administrator. What's changed? And I think that's part of the problem. The DCD is like the assessor, the auditor, or the treasurer. Those are all elected positions. They have a unique level of control and influence over one thing that most people across the political spectrums hold dear to them: the right of their property. The DCD has equal power over that right, and that's on how buildings and land use decisions are made. 3 times, you made it clear you wanted it to be voted on and elected. I'd ask on the 4th time you do the same. When we passed this, we also passed, as voters in 2002, an obligation for the county commissioners, the legislature, to sit down and look at the ordinances and say what works, what won't, and how to do this. I'm going to be a lot less diplomatic than my good colleague across the way. They failed to do their job. And because they didn't do their job, you, the voters, need to say, well, let's just let them be in charge of the person because that will make it easier. I won't use the vernacular in my house, which are legal technical terms about what the heck, but that doesn't make sense to me. What we've actually seen with the county commissioners is when there's these tensions that arise is kind of this issue, well, it's an elected position and we can't do anything. The charter said you could. Use the power in the charter. I would argue that let's keep the power of creativity, adaptability, and uniqueness in the charter. We're able to address that through ordinances. Please reject the proposal to make the director of the Department of Community Development an appointed commissioner. Thank you.
Patty, another 2 minutes if you need.
For most citizens, the investment in their land and homes is the biggest one they ever make. Consistent land use rules assures you this investment will be protected. Land use decisions should not be politicized. Transparency and appearance of fairness in decision-making is significant. Clallam County deserves the most qualified director of community development possible, one chosen based on qualifications of education, experience, knowledge, and abilities. Every jurisdiction in the nation appoints this position, so why are we so unique? For decades, our county had an appointed director of DCD like every jurisdiction in the US. The position is non-political everywhere but here. We should join with thousands of other governmental bodies and return this position of one of appointment. I was on that Charter Review Commission, as I mentioned, when we made the change to appointed DCD director. I know there have been several amendments presented to the voters previously, and they have voted for an elected DCD director. Now is the time to vote for an appointed DCD director, and I think we need to explain to the voters why we are making that decision. Thank you.
Rod, anything further?
I would just note that I think if you adopt the proposal, you also create some of the same problems that have been and were in existence up through 2002. That you would then make the position answerable to the commissioners and to the county administrator. That unlike the other elected officials who have very unique talents, education, and experience also required, the DCD can do that as well. I think that what I guess I should say is this way: the voters have a unique ability to find the best candidate for the position. We're very blessed to have had 4 DCD directors that come in with a unique sense of talent and expertise that when they've gone on to other things, they've done exceptionally well reflecting those talents and abilities that they had and shared with us and that they share elsewhere. I would say reject the proposal like you have 2 other times, and then maybe we can have the commissioners do the job and deal with the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you both. And I'm going to give you fair warning. I'm going to surprise you with a question that came in a little bit late, and I didn't get to it in the previous discussion regarding the number of votes required to put an initiative to repeal the charter itself. So you can be thinking about that. But anyway, to the question of an elected versus appointed DCD, and Patty, I neglected to mention your prior service on other charter review commissions over time too. I didn't mean to imply that you were a newbie here at all, because you're not. Has this charter review commission or previous ones that you've been involved with polled the other 38 counties in the state that have an appointed community development director or that function underneath the authority of the council or the board of commissioners, to see if we are so unique as to be an outlier, or if other counties are kind of on the cusp of the same decision, that they have weighed the pros and cons of an appointed versus an elected DCD director, and if so, what were the results of those queries? Patty.
I have not. I took the information during our interview process with the current DCD director, who gave us quite a bit of history related to working with other people in the state as her peers, and the issues that she just did not fit, could not work with, find out information because everything was so different. And that the hindrance was that there are no state laws around an elected DCD director. So the discussions that she had with her peers just were not really relevant because of how they were established. But I have not checked any of the other counties or interviewed any other DCD directors.
And I think I'm just trying to replay 4 or 5 charters in my review processes in my mind, trying to pull out what had happened. I think you'd only be able to look at the charter review counties, which there's 6 of which we are a member of that 6. And as I recall, other counties weren't interested in that. They also had, though, some pretty independent department processes from the elected officials when it came to some of those. They maybe had a little more contentious problems in the bigger charter counties on land use in the 60s, 70s, and 80s than we were seeing in Clallam County, which was arising in the late 80s, early 90s with the Growth Management Act and some of the requirements the counties all counties were having to meet that were GMA counties, and how to deal with that. That was a significant change. And that was the background that I believe was going on in the late 90s, early aughts, especially in the Esquimalt area, where the proposal, I would say, came roaring out of in public meetings. So that would be, I would say that was the difference. I don't think we would have pulled those. I do remember people saying it's different than in all these other counties, so.
Thank you both. A question from Norma Turner. Is it true that 3 of the 4, including the current elected DCD, have testified that the position of the director of DCD should be appointed? In your recollection, what has been the opinion of the 4 elected officials over time as to whether they should be elected or appointed?
Well, as I had mentioned during our interviews with all the county and elected appointed officials, including the DCD director, they all stated that the position should be appointed. And that was everyone we interviewed, including the County Board of Commissioners, the county prosecutor, the sheriff. All of those people said the position should be appointed.
I'll just say, whenever anybody asks you a leading question, an attorney usually just lets them have the space and time of the mic.
This question, as you've noted, has been on the ballot previously a couple of times. And so it may be something that voters already have a view of and an opinion regarding, since it's not a new, fresh question to the voters. So we will see what their opinion is. Now to the previous question, and here's the predicted surprise. There was another question from Norma Turner, one of your colleagues. Why should, and this relates again to the question of the number of votes to rescind the charter, why should we make it harder to put on the ballot a possible repeal than any other measures, since it will not happen until the citizens approve it at the ballot box?
You want to take that?
Sure. I always love these questions from Norma because they presume an answer that she wants you to say, which she's not going to get. It's the Constitution of the county that we, the people of Clallam County, got together and said, this is how we're going to make it. If we want to suddenly tear our government apart at a county level, that should take a lot of effort. That should not be left to a small group that's interested in what they think the county should look like, that can put forward a proposal. Maybe it be well-financed, or maybe it be, they might have a lot of tech savvy, and so they can figure out how to spam everybody with the idea of why they think the county's wrong, and then suddenly have this done. It should be an effort that takes a lot more of the county engagement, a lot more of the county voters, and a lot more discussion than just, we don't like it.
And what I would say, as charter members, we reviewed that. We voted to move that forward to the ballot for the voters to make a decision on. We felt it was important enough to determine whether the voters felt we should go to a lower number or stay with the current number.
Thank you both. We do have actually it's more of a statement than a question, but Ken Riondo writes, if you have an elected independent DCD director, this person is not beholden to the commissioners. A recent large application at Esquimalt demonstrated this. The electorate wants an elected DCD director. And with that, we are 1 minute away from our time. We managed with all four of you, Sue and Ron and Patty and Rod, to fit this discussion within the allotted hour. I really appreciate your standing for your service on the Charter Review Commission this time and in previous commissions. Thank you for the enlightenment that you've given us this morning with your very well-founded arguments, pro and con both. And I'll turn it back over to Kai, our president.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We hope that you will join us again next Tuesday for the next and last one of our electoral forums in this election season. And I wish you all a good day. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.